of them had as little as one nail holding them, versus you had an older stone house that may have a damage to a wall that didn't compromise the whole house.
Well, it's the change in construction. Regardless of the construction, you can't beat the weather. You just don't stand up against it. But when you introduce temperatures into a home close to 2,000 degrees, it doesn't take much time.
How do you see technology? How has it changed over the time that you've been doing the job?
Well, it's changed. Things are all better. Some of the major changes, basically, and I'm a sprinkler zealot, is in the built-in fire protection. If you can build in the fire protection, let me put it to you this way. You may have a burglar alarm system in your house to protect you when you go to sleep, and it makes you feel comfortable. But it would be nice to have a police officer sitting in your living room to protect you all night long. Well, you can't afford that. The same thing goes with fire. Wouldn't it be nice if you could have a fireman, sitting in your living room, making sure everything's going to be right while you go to bed? Well, can't afford that, or even when nobody's home. But we can put fire protection systems into our buildings, sprinklers in particular, which not only will they alert us and alert the fire services to the fire, but they will at least control them. And if you are actually occupying the building, they're designed to give you that opportunity to get out. Fires can grow exponentially in such a short time. You may not get the time to get out of a building. And the technology of sprinkler systems and alarm systems have brought the fatalities down. Back when they introduced the smoke detectors, the first smoke detectors back in the 70s came out, and one was called, I believe, a Statrol. It cost $100, and it did not use a standard 9-volt battery. You had to change your battery periodically, 6 months, and it was a $12 battery. Today, you can buy a smoke detector. It does the same job, all right, which will last for 5 years. Don't have to change the batteries, and it'll cost you $5, $6. And yet, very easy to put up. We don't even the mounting systems are very easy. So with those types of devices in place, when they were introduced, we started to see that big drop, a significant drop in fire fatalities and injuries.
Are sprinklers being mandated more now?
Yes, the latest edition of the building code, the National Building Code, which is not mandated but is out there for communities to adopt. The latest information I have, when the boards went over it through the review process, they did adopt residential sprinkler systems as being mandatory, but that has to be adopted on a local level.
Okay. And off the top of your head, I know this is an exact number, but typical house, what does it add to the cost of a typical house?
That'll depend.
10 grand?
No, you can talk about percentages.
Okay.
Anywhere between 1% and 3%. We did a whole series of very expensive townhomes going back maybe about 15 years ago. The average cost, and these were 2.5, 3-story townhomes. Many of them had elevators in them. They were all high-end. And the cost for the sprinklers was just over $1,000 against a $500,000 home.
Does that go back to the person in a reduction in insurance in any way? Does it lower insurance to have sprinklers in the house?
Well, I can't tell you the exact numbers. Some people would think that it would increase it. It actually doesn't. The underwriting figures I do not have, so I can't answer that accurately. But the simple fact of the matter is, with a residential sprinkler, A, you're safer, and B, there's going to be significantly less damage. So it's to the benefit of the insurers to have that. Technology, the change in technology, they're working on a system whereby not only does it put the fire out, but then it will learn, so it will turn itself off to prevent any additional water damage.
Okay. And a lot of people, a lot of the damage is from water sometimes in putting out a fire. It's you get water damage, and you have to.
Well, we'll get a little water damage, but
you save the house.
You save the house. You save the occupants of the house.
Right.
And not to be smart. Nobody's drowned because of a sprinkler.
Right. Do you do you see the job as affected? And I ask everybody this about this job because I was raised by farming people. How do the seasons affect the job? Do you see any seasonal?
It's no fun now. Okay. The winter and the summer, both extremes. Remember what the firefighters have to wear. They're wearing turnout gear, and they'll wear it as the temperatures are going to drop in the next few days. And this gear is designed to try to keep them as warm as possible, besides protecting them from the environment that they have to deal with. But remember, that's the identical gear that they're going to wear when it's 90 degrees out when summer comes around again. There we haven't gotten the technology where we can make it that much more comfortable. So it's much tougher in the summer. It's much tougher in the winter. You need more people, and you've got to change your crews off much more often because they can't stay on that part of the job that long.
Yeah, you're right, because the gear is very good in a fire, but outside of a fire, it just hasn't evolved in the same way as some garments have for adapting to conditions.
Well, there's a lot of technology, and it is a lot better gear. It's lighter. It's more comfortable. The level of protection is greater. However, it's still substantial, and it is designed to do what it does. But that makes it a little more difficult for the individual who has to wear it. I did
a thing, and I was wondering, and you're certainly the person that can confirm this. There was a thing where they were saying that, statistically speaking, that busiest days of the year for fire were Christmas Eve, Christmas, New Year's Eve, New Year's, and Halloween.
I can't speak to that, to be honest with you. I do track our calls, and I look at all, which days are higher than others. There are a few days in the week, for some reason, we'll have 3-4 calls, and then we'll go for a couple of days with absolutely none. As far as the holidays, I don't have the numbers on that. My experience has been probably not. We may get some smoke detector calls as, people are cooking and things like that, but not so much the serious fires. The serious fires used to be Saturday morning after 2 or Sunday morning after 2, all right, weekends, all right, where people may be going out, had been out partying in the evening. People were smoking back then. They'd come home, they'd sit on the couch, and turn on TV and fall asleep. And when we got the calls at 2 o'clock in the morning, especially as an officer, those were the ones that you really wondered about because they tended to be more serious. But I can't speak to holidays. I don't have those numbers.
What would you tell people, as just from your experience as fire marshal, as a couple rules of thumb to not have a fire at their house or to reduce the risk? What are things that you see that are common mistakes? Well,
the big thing that I observed is housekeeping, whether it be residential or commercial. If your housekeeping is good, if you don't have a lot of clutter, the odds are that, and I can't say statistically, but based on my observation, we're not going to have that frequency of fires. Whereas where we have homes where things aren't as well kept, those are the type of occupancies that we do have more problems in. Secondly, just good fire prevention practices. There's nothing wrong with a candle, but don't, watch where you put it. Are there combustibles there? Look at this time of year, everybody's going out and buying holiday lights. Look at what you're buying. We did a show on that years and years ago. But basically, when you go into the store to buy a light, look at the label. Is it a tested product? Look for the Underwriter's Laboratory label. Make sure it may cost you a few more dollars, all right, but you'll live to see the next day.
And that's really important because they're not all created equal. They may look the same on the shelf at a glance, but they're not created equal. And that's
not at all.
Frayed wires, things that are labeled indoor that are used outdoor because people aren't doing it correctly, but just cheap manufactured thin wires burn.
Well, it's like anything we do, whether it be on the fire side of it or anything we do in life. When you buy something, when you purchase something, when you're given something, you ought to know what you got, but more importantly, how to use it correctly. And when you buy a product anymore, It always comes with some paperwork with warning after warning after warning on basically common sense items, but they're in there.
If you weren't doing fire service, if you didn't choose to do that all those years ago, what would you have done instead?
Well, I never chose it.
It chose you.
It chose me.
Yeah.
I was very fortunate that way. I can't think of a better career to have had. I never really had to go out and look for these things. They sort of came about. Very fortunate. And I find it was an extremely rewarding field to be in, meeting some of the best people that I've ever met. They're highly intelligent. They're extremely well motivated. They're generous to a fault. You just can't do anything else. I don't know what I've done. I did some work in the insurance industry. It was okay, but nothing is rewarding. Maybe if I was a brain surgeon, I guess I get something out of that. But that definitely wasn't the case.
I find with a lot of police that we have on that their other thing was lawyers, and a lot of lawyers, their other thing was police. And it's just, it's always interesting to see what people's, what they might have done or what they thought about. Like, I used to play the bassoon a little bit or something, what they thought about. But
like I tell people, from the time I got into the fire service until I didn't totally retire from the fire service yet, but there's never been a day that I've had to go to work.
Okay, that's a good way to put it. And it's the other people that were saying that their parents filled out the thing and got them to join the fire department. One of the things that I remember in common that they were saying that one of the things that they had learned there was they come to understand fraternity and brotherhood at the firehouse, and that was one of the lessons that they learned early on.
It's a tremendous organization. It's more than that. It's family. Especially if you work in a career department where you're living in a fire station, maybe 2 days at a time with a group of people, week after week, month after month, etc. It becomes a true family. But the fire service in and of itself, I can speak about. And I can tell you this, if you're a member of the fire service, you'll never get lost, not only in this country, even when you go overseas. It's a very close-knit, dedicated group of individuals.
What do you think your legacy will be?
Never even gave it a thought. My legacy probably, the best thing, I got 2 wonderful children and 2 wonderful grandkids. I couldn't ask for more. And if that's the only thing I ever get in life, I'm happy.
You're ahead of the game.
I've been very fortunate with my family. Excellent people. They're older now, and now I see it with my grandkids. Yeah, they're kids, and they can give you their moments, but I just feel very fortunate.
No, that's great. I really appreciate you coming, and I appreciate. I still, in all the classes I've taken over the years, I've taken a lot. Yours always stood out in my mind. You're always a good instructor, always very informative, and always very interesting. And
flattery will get you everywhere.
I really appreciate it, and thank you very much.
Well, thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, and thank you for listening. Stay smart, stay sane, stay sane. Sometimes I'm right, and I can be wrong.
My own beliefs. The Apostle Paul told the Thessalonians in chapter 2 not to be troubled or shaken in their heart or spirit. He said not to falter in their faith or their understanding of Christ, either by what they read or heard, because the day of Christ was at hand. Hello, I'm Sam Rohr, president of the American Pastors Network. The Apostle Paul warned the early believers not to be deceived by the overwhelming deception and to expect a falling away from the truth. He said there would be great wickedness and great iniquity and the great wicked one. Paul said, therefore, to stand fast and hold tight to the truth they had been taught. If this was a reality and a necessity in Paul's day, how much more today? He went on to say, but the Lord is faithful, who shall establish you and keep you from evil. I'm Sam Rohr of the American Pastors Network saying, let us also not be deceived in our current days of evil, when we also see a falling away. If there was ever a time for true believers to stand fast for the truth, it is now.
Join the Pennsylvania Pastors Network at papastors.net.